Some corners of this world only need one person brave enough to stand. A little girl sits behind a lemonade stand on a Los Angeles street corner. A jar of coins she is saving for her mother's birthday gift. 3 gang members walk up. They drink without paying. They pour the pitcher onto the sidewalk. They kick the table over and take her coin jar while she cries. Nobody helps. Doors close. Curtains shut. But across the street, a slim man in sunglasses saw everything. He folds his newspaper, stands, walks across with the kind of calm that makes the air go still. He kneels beside her and says 5 words. "Don't move. I'll get your jar back." That man was Bruce Lee, and he followed those 3 men around the corner alone. But what did the neighborhood hear next? If the story moves you, subscribe and follow for more. Now let me take you back to that morning, because what happened on that corner did not start with a lemonade stand. It started with a man who almost was not there at all. Bruce Lee had no reason to be on that block. None. He lived miles away. He had a training session booked across town. But that morning his car would not start. Dead battery. His wife Linda told him to call a cab. He said no. Said the walk would clear his head. He had been up since 4 in the morning working on a script he was writing. A story about a man who fights his way up a tower, 1 floor at a time, each floor harder than the last. That project would later become a legend of its own. But on this day it was just pages on a kitchen table and a man who needed air. So he walked, and the route he chose brought him down a street he had never been on before. Now here is the thing about Bruce Lee that most people get wrong. They think of him as a fighter, a martial artist, a man who could knock you down before you blinked. And all of that was true. Believe me, it was true. But the people who knew him, the ones who trained with him, ate with him, sat with him on his back porch at night, they would tell you something different. They would say Bruce Lee noticed things. He noticed when someone at the table was not eating. He noticed when a student was favoring one leg. He noticed the woman at the grocery store counting her coins twice before putting an item back on the shelf. He paid attention. And that morning, walking down a street he had no business being on, he noticed a little girl sitting behind a cardboard sign that said, "Lemonade 10 cents. Her name was Lily Chen, 9 years old, skinny arms, hair pulled back in a ponytail that was already coming loose. She had set up that stand at 7 in the morning, before the heat got bad. Her mother worked double shifts at a garment factory downtown. Her father had passed 2 years before. Cancer, quick and cruel. Lily did not talk about it much. She just did things. She swept the apartment. She packed her own lunch. And she saved coins in a jar. That jar. Let me tell you about that jar. It was a pickle jar, washed out, with a piece of tape on the side that said Mom's birthday in crayon. She had been filling it for 2 months. Nickels, dimes, a few quarters from neighbors who bought lemonade not because they were thirsty but because they liked seeing a kid try that hard. By the time Bruce sat down on the bench across the street, Lily had already made her first 2 sales of the day. A mailman and an old woman with a shopping cart. The jar was not full, not even close, but it was hers. Bruce bought a newspaper from a stand on the corner, sat on that bench, opened the paper, and he watched, not because anything was wrong yet, just because he noticed her. A small girl with a big jar and a purpose. And then 3 men turned the corner. Now, this block had a reputation. The kind of reputation that made people walk faster, look down, and keep moving. There was a crew that ran it. Not a big operation. Not the kind that made the news. But big enough that every shop owner on that street paid a weekly fee to keep their windows intact. The barber paid. The grocery store paid. The woman who sold tamales from a cart paid. Everyone paid. And these 3 men were the ones who collected. The tallest one went by the name Ray. Big shoulders. Lazy eyes. He walked like he owned every square foot of concrete beneath him. The second one, shorter, thicker, had a scar along his jawline and never spoke much. The third was the youngest, maybe 19. jumpy, always looking around. He was the one who carried the bat. They saw Lily before she saw them, and they did not slow down. They walked straight to her little table like it was just another stop on the route. Bruce lowered his newspaper. Just an inch. Just enough to watch. Ray reached the table first. He picked up a cup without asking. Poured himself a lemonade. Drank it in one swallow. Then he poured another. Drank that too. He looked at Lily the way you look at something that does not matter. Like she was part of the sidewalk. Lily said nothing. She just sat very still with her hands in her lap. She had seen these men before. Every kid on the block had. You learned early. You do not speak. You do not move. You wait until they leave. But they did not leave. The short one with the scar picked up the pitcher. He held it over the sidewalk and tilted it. Lemonade spilled out in a slow yellow stream across the concrete. Lily's eyes followed it. Every drop. She had squeezed those lemons herself that morning. 12 of them. Her hands still stung from the juice getting into a paper cut on her thumb. Now here is where it gets hard to tell. The youngest one. The one with the bat. He stepped forward and kicked the table. Not hard enough to break it. Just hard enough to knock it sideways. The cup scattered. The sign fell. And the jar. That jar with Mom's birthday written in crayon. Ray picked it up. Shook it once. Listened to the coins rattle. And he put it in his jacket pocket like it was nothing. Like it was always his. Lily did not scream. She did not run. She just sat down on the curb and started crying. Quiet crying. The kind where no sound comes out at first and then it all comes at once. A 9-year-old girl sitting on a curb on a hot day with lemonade drying on the sidewalk beside her and nothing left on the table. And the block did what the block always did. The barber pulled his blinds down. The woman at the grocery turned her back. A man walking his dog crossed to the other side of the street. Doors closed. Curtains moved. Silence settled like dust. Get this. An entire block of grown adults watched a child get robbed in daylight. And not one of them moved. Not one. Because they had all done the math. Help the girl and your store window gets broken tomorrow. Call the police and something worse happens next week. Everyone on that street had made peace with fear a long time ago. It was just the cost of living there. But across the street, something shifted. Bruce set the newspaper on the bench. He took off his sunglasses, folded them, placed them on top of the paper. Every movement was slow, deliberate, like a man who had already decided what was going to happen and was in no rush to get there. He stood up. Now, believe me when I tell you this. People who saw Bruce Lee in person, not on a screen, not in a photograph, but in real life, they all said the same thing. He was smaller than you expected. Slim, compact, not the kind of man who fills a doorway. But when he moved, something changed in the air around him. You felt it before you understood it. A stillness that was not still at all, like the quiet before something breaks. He crossed the street. No hurry, no hesitation. He knelt beside Lily, picked up her little table and set it upright, gathered a few of the plastic cups and stacked them neatly. Then he looked at her, and his voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that makes a frightened child stop shaking. "What's your name?" She told him. "Lily. That's a good name. Lily, I need you to stay right here. Can you do that?" She nodded. "Good. I'll get your jar back." He said it the same way someone might say they are going to get the mail. No drama, no threat, just a fact. And then he walked around the corner, in the direction the 3 men had gone. He did not run. He did not call out. He just walked. Lily sat at her empty table. The block was quiet. A bird landed on the sidewalk and pecked at a wet spot where the lemonade had spilled. Car passed. Somewhere a radio played. And then, 3 sounds. Short, hard, like someone clapping their hands together with force. A trash can fell over. Metal on concrete. Then nothing. Silence. For 10 seconds. 20. 30. And then Bruce walked back around the corner. The jar was in his right hand. His shirt was still tucked in. His hair had not moved. There was not a mark on him. He walked to Lily's table, set the jar down in front of her, and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a $20 bill, folded it once and dropped it into the jar. "One lemonade, please." Lily stared at him, then at the jar, then back at him. Her hands were shaking, but she poured. She filled a cup to the top and handed it to him. He took a sip, held it for a moment, nodded. "Best I've ever had." He sat down on the curb beside her. And for a few minutes that is all there was. A man and a girl sitting on a curb in the sun, drinking lemonade. The block was still. The air was warm. Everything felt simple, safe, like the worst part was over and the rest of the day would just be summer. But it was not over. Not even close. The barber was the first one to come outside. His name was Mr. Kwon. Korean man, mid-60s. He had been cutting hair on that block for 11 years and had not once gotten involved in anything that did not happen inside his shop. But he walked out his front door, crossed the sidewalk, and stood in front of Bruce with a look on his face that was not relief. It was fear. "You need to leave," he said. "Right now. Take the girl and go." Bruce looked up at him. "What's the problem?" "The problem is those 3 boys work for Vincent Lau. And someone on this block has already made a phone call. You have maybe 20 minutes. Now here is where the story changes. Because up until this point you might have thought this was a simple thing. A strong man steps in. He handles 3 bullies. The girl gets her jar back. Everybody goes home. But that is not how it works on a block like this. There is always someone above the ones you see. And Vincent Lau was that someone. Let me tell you about Vincent Lau. He was not a street thug. He wore pressed shirts. He drove a black Lincoln. He owned 2 restaurants and a laundromat, and every one of those businesses was a front. His real operation was loan sharking and protection. Half the businesses in a 3-block radius paid him monthly. Not because he asked nicely, because the last man who refused had his entire storefront burned to the ground on a Tuesday night. Fire department came, filed a report. Nothing ever happened. Everyone understood the message. And the 3 men Bruce had just dropped around that corner. They were Vincent's collectors. His hands on the street. Hurting them was not just a fight. It was a challenge. And Vincent Lau did not let challenges go unanswered. Mr. Kwon grabbed Bruce's arm. "You do not understand. He will not come for you. He will come for the block. He will come for her." He pointed at Lily. "He will make an example. That is what he does." Bruce looked at Lily. She was watching them talk. She did not understand all the words, but she understood enough. The fear was back in her eyes. And this is the moment. Right here. This is where most people would have made the smart decision. Walk away. You did a good thing. You got the jar back. But this is not your block. This is not your fight. You have a wife at home. You have children. You have a career. You have everything to lose and nothing to gain by staying. Bruce stood up. He looked down the street in both directions. Then he looked at Mr. Kwon. "Where is Lily's mother?" "She works downtown. Double shift. She won't be back until tonight." "Is there anyone else? Family?" Mr. Kwon shook his head. Bruce nodded once. Then he did something that Mr. Kwon would talk about for years afterward. He walked back to the bench, picked up his newspaper and sunglasses, came back and sat down at Lily's table. Right there. In the open. In plain view of anyone who drove down that street. He was not leaving. "Mr. Kwon," he said, "do you have any lemons?" The barber stared at him. "What? Lemons? She's out of lemonade and I think she's going to need a fresh pitcher. Now get this." Mr. Kwon stood there for a long moment, his jaw working, his hands opening and closing, and then he turned around and walked into his shop. 2 minutes later he came back out with a small bag of lemons he kept in a mini refrigerator for his tea. He set them on Lily's table without a word and went back inside. But he did not close his blinds this time. He left them open. And then something else happened. The woman from the grocery store came out with a bag of sugar. Did not say anything. Just placed it on the table and went back inside. Then a man from the apartment above the laundromat lowered a plastic pitcher down from his window on a piece of twine. Lily caught it and looked up. The man gave a small nod and pulled the twine back up. Nobody said a word, but the table was filling up. Bruce helped Lily squeeze the lemons. He showed her how to roll them on the table first to get more juice out. She watched his hands carefully and copied what he did. Within 10 minutes, there was a fresh pitcher of lemonade on the table and 5 clean cups lined up beside it. But the block was not calm. Curtains were moving. People were watching from windows. Everyone was counting the minutes, because Vincent Lau was coming, and everyone knew what that meant. Bruce poured himself a cup, took a sip, set it down, and waited. The black Lincoln turned onto the block 14 minutes later. It moved slow, the kind of slow that is not about traffic. It is about making sure everyone sees you coming. The engine hummed low. The windows were tinted dark. It rolled past the grocery store, past the barber shop, past the apartment with the laundromat on the ground floor, and stopped directly in front of Lily's table. Bruce did not stand up. 2 doors opened. 2 men got out of the back seat. Both of them bigger than the 3 from before. Both wearing dark jackets in the middle of summer, which told you everything you needed to know about what was underneath those jackets. They stood on either side of the car and scanned the block. Then the front passenger door opened, and Vincent Lau stepped out. He was not what you would expect. Not tall. Not wide. He was a thin man in his early 50s with silver at his temples and a pressed white shirt buttoned to the collar. He wore no jewelry. His shoes were polished. He looked like a man who might manage a bank. And that was exactly the point. Vincent Lau had learned a long time ago that the most dangerous thing you can be is calm. Quiet men with clean hands make people more nervous than loud ones with fists. He straightened his cuffs, looked at the lemonade stand, looked at Bruce, and then he walked forward. His 2 men stayed by the car. "You're sitting in my neighborhood," Vincent said. Bruce looked up at him. "I'm buying lemonade. I heard you had some trouble with a few of my employees this morning." "I wouldn't call it trouble." Vincent tilted his head slightly. He studied Bruce the way a man studies a lock he is deciding whether to pick or break. "Do you know who I am? Does it matter?" Now here is the thing. Vincent Lau had been running this part of the city for almost 15 years. In that time, no one had ever sat across from him and spoken to him like he was just another man on the street. Not once. People lowered their eyes. People said, "Yes, sir." People moved when he told them to move. And here was this slim man in a white t-shirt sitting at a child's lemonade stand, looking at him like they were equals. Vincent stepped closer. "I'm going to explain something to you. This block pays me. Every store, every cart, every table on this sidewalk. That includes this one." He pointed at Lily's stand. "You put your hands on 3 of my people. That's a debt, and I collect debts." Bruce looked at Lily. She was frozen. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. He looked back at Vincent. "She's 9 years old. I don't care if she's 5. The principle is the same." Bruce stood up, slowly. And this is the part that every person on that block who was watching from their window would remember for the rest of their lives. He did not raise his voice. He did not clench his fists. He did not take a fighting stance. He just stood. But something shifted. It was like watching a wire go tight. Every part of him was still, but the stillness had weight. The 2 men by the car felt it. One of them put his hand inside his jacket. Bruce spoke, and his voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You're going to leave this block. You're going to leave this girl alone. And you're not going to come back." Vincent laughed. Short, sharp, not a real laugh, a signal. And his 2 men started walking forward. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. The first man reached into his jacket. Bruce closed the distance in 1 step and hit him once in the center of his chest with an open palm. The man dropped straight down like someone had cut his strings. He did not get up. The second man swung wide. A big looping punch with his full weight behind it. Bruce moved under it like water going around a rock. He struck twice. Once to the ribs. Once to the side of the neck. The second man staggered sideways into the Lincoln and slid down the door to the pavement. For seconds, both men on the ground. Bruce had not moved more than 6 feet from Lily's table. He turned back to Vincent. And now Vincent Lau understood. You could see it in his face. The calculation changing. This was not a man who got lucky with 3 street-level collectors. This was something else entirely. Do you know who I am? Bruce said. Same question Vincent had asked him, but different now. Vincent did not answer, but his eyes moved to Bruce's hands, to the way he stood, to the way the 2 largest men he employed were lying on the sidewalk trying to breathe. My name is Bruce Lee. Silence. A long one. The kind of silence where everything that happens next depends on what one man decides. Vincent Lau looked at Bruce, looked at his 2 men on the ground, looked at the little girl behind the lemonade stand holding a pitcher with both hands. And then he did something no one on that block had ever seen him do. He stepped back. He turned around, got in his car, and the Lincoln pulled away. Slow. The same way it came in, but different. Everyone watching from their windows knew it. Something had just cracked. If you have been listening this far, I want to ask you for one thing. Just hit that subscribe button and follow along. That is all. Because this story is not over yet. And what happened next on that block changed everything. The first door that opened was Mr. Kwan's. He walked out of his barber shop and stood on the sidewalk. He did not say anything. He just stood there. Then the woman from the grocery store came out. Then the man from the apartment above the laundromat. Then a young mother carrying a toddler on her hip. Then an old man with a cane who lived at the end of the block and had not come outside in weeks. One by one, door by door, the block came out. Nobody cheered. Nobody clapped. This was not that kind of moment. It was quieter than that. It was people standing in front of their own homes for the first time in years without looking over their shoulders. It was a street exhaling. Mr. Kwan walked to Lily's table. He put $2 in the jar. 1 lemonade, he said. Lily poured it. The woman from the grocery store was next. Then the young mother. Then the old man with the cane, who had to sit down on the curb to drink his but smiled while he did it. Within 20 minutes there was a line. A real line. At a 9-year-old girl's lemonade stand. Bruce watched from the bench across the street. He had moved back to where he started that morning. Same bench. Same spot. He had his newspaper open again, but he was not reading it. He was watching Lily pour cup after cup. Watching her count the coins. Watching her smile get wider each time someone dropped money in the jar. Now here is something people do not know. Bruce stayed on that block for 3 more hours. He did not announce himself to anyone. He did not give speeches. He did not walk around like a hero. He sat on that bench and he watched. And when the line finally thinned out, he crossed the street one more time. Lily looked up at him. The jar was almost full now. More money in it than she had ever seen. Enough for her mother's gift and then some. Thank you, she said. And it was the kind of thank you that a child says when they mean it with every part of themselves. No performance. No rehearsal. Just a small voice and big eyes. Bruce knelt down so he was at her level. Lily, can I tell you something? She nodded. You did not need me today. You know that, right? She shook her head. They took my jar. And I got it back. But you sat here. You did not run. You did not hide. You stayed at your table. That is the hardest thing a person can do. Stay when everything in you wants to leave. She thought about that. Were you scared? When you went around the corner? Bruce smiled. A real smile. No. But I'll tell you a secret. I was scared when I saw them take your jar. Because I knew I had a choice. And choices are the only thing that scare me. He stood up, put his sunglasses on, picked up his newspaper from the bench. Happy birthday to your mother, he said. And then he walked. Down the block, past the barber shop, past the grocery store, around the corner at the far end, the opposite direction from where he had gone that morning. And he was gone. Lily never saw him again. But let me tell you what happened after. Vincent Lau's crew never came back to that block. Not the next day. Not the next week. Not ever. The word spread fast in those circles. You do not go near that street corner. Whether it was fear of Bruce Lee or something else, nobody tested it. The protection payments stopped. Mr. Kwan kept his money. The grocery store kept hers. The tamale cart kept rolling without tax. And the block changed. Slowly. The way things change when fear leaves a place. Mr. Kwan started putting a bench outside his shop. The grocery woman set out a crate of fruit on the sidewalk. The young mother let her children play outside after school. It was not a revolution. It was something smaller and more important. People started acting like the street belonged to them. Lily's mother came home that night and found the jar on the kitchen table. Full. She counted the coins and the bills. There was over $40 in there. Lily told her everything. Her mother sat at the table and cried. Not because of the money, because her 9-year-old daughter had learned something that most people never learn. That the world is not always kind. But sometimes, if you stay where you are, kindness finds you. Lily bought her mother a silk scarf for her birthday. Blue with white flowers. Her mother wore it every Sunday for years. And every year after that, on her mother's birthday, Lily set up a lemonade stand on that same corner. Same spot. Same cardboard sign. Same jar. Even when she was 12 and it was not cool anymore. Even when she was 15 and her friends thought it was strange. Even when she was 17 and about to leave for college. She set up the stand. People on the block always came out and bought a cup. They knew what it meant. It was not about lemonade. It was about the day that corner stopped being afraid. Believe me, some stories do not end with a fight. They end with a girl pouring lemonade on a summer day, on a corner that used to be quiet for all the wrong reasons. And now it was quiet for the right ones. Because some corners of this world only need one person brave enough to stand. And on that day, in the summer of 1971, 2 people stood. A man who could have walked away, and a little girl who never did.